Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for one final daily dose of Phyrexia All Will Be One spoilers. So today, just a few minutes ago, we got the full set. You can check it out over at MTGpreviews.com, see literally every single card, sort them, filter them, all that good stuff. And honestly, we don't have a ton to talk about today. We have a single rare that came out today. We got a handful of lower rarity cards, which could be relevant. So I wanted to mention those. I also wanted to let you know what's coming up. We've made it through spoiler season, but that does not mean we're done with Phyrexia All Will Be One. Over the next few weeks and couple of months, we're going to have a ton more Phyrexia stuff. So what is coming up soon on the MTGGoldfish YouTube and in other places? So first, we'll have our top 10 videos talking about the best constructed cards from the set for various formats. We'll have a Commander podcast talking about our favorite Commander cards from the set. Next Thursday, February 2nd, is early access day, so you should head on over to the stream at twitch.tv/MTGGoldfish. We'll be playing a bunch of wacky brews, checking out the new cards before it fully releases on Magic Arena. And then, of course, once the set's out, we will have all the normal content, Against the Odds and much brew, tons of gameplay, tons of streams, doing all the ridiculous things we can do with these super sweet new cards. So anyway, I want to give you those reminders. Also a reminder, now that we've seen the full set, if you need some of these cards, you can grab them from our awesome sponsor Card Kingdom over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish, and even get a free goldfish sticker. Just let them know you want one and they'll hook you up. They're super cool like that. Anyway, let's talk one final time about Phyrexia All Will Be One spoilers. So our one rare of the day is Red Sun's Twilight, the final card in the Twilight cycle, and it seems like a pretty fun one. So double red and X for a sorcery says destroy up to X target artifacts if X is 5 or more. So if you spend 7 or more mana on it, for each artifact destroyed this way, create a token that's a copy of it. Those tokens gain haste and you exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So Red Sun Twilight, it's essentially buy force for 1 more mana, but you get this huge upside where if you cast it for a ton of mana, you're gonna get temporary token copies of all the artifacts that you blow up. As far as standard is concerned, it's probably a sideboard card. We do have quite a few artifacts. Obviously, the dream is your opponent has a Portal to Phyrexia, or a Cityscape Lover, or a Mightstone, a Weakstone, or maybe some of each of these, and you're still alive somehow, and you blow them all up, and you get copies of them, and just absolutely wreck your opponent. Although, more likely, you're probably getting, what, Unlicensed Hearse, Reckoner, Bankbuster, stuff like that. So I think that this has a role in Standard as a sideboard card. Where I think it'll really shine, though, is in Commander. In Commander, this is kind of a free spell if you hit a bunch of mana rocks. Like, you gotta spend a bunch of mana, but you'll get that mana back potentially, blowing up Soul Rings and Arcane Signets, which you can use, and they're gonna have haste, and you can tap them right away. So it kind of turns into this weird free spell. Plus, as we were talking about, Commander has a ton of big artifacts. Just watch Commander Clash and see Phil obsessively try to get Portal to Phyrexia into play every single game. Imagine the upside in the late game of just blowing up everyone's artifacts and getting copies of them and potentially just winning the game on the spot. Obviously, if you want to go super deep, kind of hilarious with Mycosynth Lattice. Mycosynth Lattice, so everything's artifacts, and then you can Red Sun Twilight for all your mana, blow up creatures, planeswalkers, whatever you want to, your opponent's lands even, but blow up everything that you want to and get copies of them. That seems like a pretty funny way to play the card. Probably not super competitive, but it would be hilarious. So Red Sun's Twilight, I think it's too expensive for formats like Modern or Pioneer. In Standard, could serve a purpose as a sideboard card, especially as we get more artifacts in the meta from Phyrexia, from March of the Machines. So definitely keep this one in mind as a good sideboard hoser, with the upside of maybe winning the game if you hit the right artifacts, but mostly just a really powerful card for Commander. As far as lower rarity cards, there's actually a ton since we got the full set today, but there's a handful that I want to mention briefly because I think they're actually relevant for Constructed. First up, Evolving Adaptive, 1 mana 0/0, ETBs with an oil counter, gets +1/+1 for each oil counter on it, and then when another creature you control enters the battlefield, and it has greater power or toughness than Evolving Adaptive, you put an oil counter on it. So this is essentially just another experiment one, a Pelt Collector. A twist on these cards, not quite as good as Pelt Collector because you don't get the upside of getting Trample or whatever, but about on par with Experiment one. And this card card's worth mentioning just because both of these cards, Experiment 1 and Pelt Collector, have seen pretty heavy constructed play in the past, so I think Evolving Adaptive definitely has a chance to see standard play, either in some sort of like Gruul Modify deck, where this is perfect for that as a 1-drop, where you're getting the oil counter and modifying for Thundering Raju and all the other synergies in the deck, or maybe just generic Mono Green Stompy with this plus Ascendant Pack Leader and all the new good green cards we got. I could see a Mono Green aggro deck actually being pretty decent in standard. So Evolving Adaptive, it's not busted or anything, but it certainly looks like the kind of card that can see 60 card play. We also got Voidwing Hybrid, a 2-mana Demure Phyrexian bat. It's a 2/1 flyer with Toxic 1. Most importantly, it says, when you proliferate, return Voidwing Hybrid from your graveyard to your hand. So this card, the recursiveness makes it exciting. A 2-mana 2/1 flyer, not bad stats. We've seen like Selfless Spirit, Spectral Adversary, Warquite Marauder see play in the past with these stats. A nice little aggro 2-drop. And then if you're a proliferate deck, the ability to just keep getting this back from your graveyard repeatedly when you do Venser shenanigans or Cankerbloom or Bloated Contaminator seems very, very powerful. Also impressive that it can actually block. A lot of times when you have these recursive cards, they have a downside of like coming into play tapped or not being able to block. This one you can chump block with and then proliferate and get it back and recast it and chump block with it again and again. So it can really stall out the game for quite a while in a deck that's built around proliferate. And one of the most shocking things of all Phyrexia is just how efficient proliferate is now. Like last time we got proliferate, it was so overcosted. Now there are a lot of like 1-mana, 2-mana cards that just happen to proliferate. So I think building a legit proliferate deck, very possible now, thanks to all the new cards we're getting. Also, want to mention Crawling Chorus, another card that doesn't look like much, but very similar cards. Again, I've seen some competitive play in the past. So a 1-mana 1/1 Phyrexian Horror with Toxic 1, and it says when it dies, you make a 1/1 colorless Phyrexian my artifact creature token with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. So this is a twist on Doom Traveler, Garrison Cat, Haunted Witness, the 1-drop that is a 1/1, and then when it dies, you get another 1/1 out of it. In some ways, this is the worst of the bunch, since, again, I just don't really like the Might tokens. The not being able to block aspect of the Might tokens is a pretty big drawback, but pretty much all of these cards have seen play in sacrifice-style decks in the past, where this is 1 mana, you can sacrifice me twice, essentially, and if your plan's just to sacrifice the Might anyway, not being able to block isn't the hugest drawback. So because we've seen very similar cards be very good in the past, Crawling Chorus could certainly have a role in standard at a minimum. In older formats, you'll probably stick with a Doom Traveler. Making like a Flying Spirit is better than making the Might for the most part, but in standard, it's a pretty sweet option for sacrifice decks. Finally today, as I mentioned before, we got the full set. So there's a ton of random commons to look through, probably some interesting stuff for draft or more casual decks. Nothing else that really jumped out to me as like, wow, this is obviously going to be super impactful for Constructed or even Commander, but you should head on over and check them out at mtgpreviews.com. You can sort them by rarity and by color and do all that good stuff. So anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Phyrexia All Will Be One spoilers. Not just today, but for the whole spoiler season. The full set is out. So now that we've seen the full set, let me know what you think. What are you most hyped for? What do you think of the power level overall? I said yesterday that I think this is the most powerful set, at least in standard. Some people are arguing for Kamigawa, which makes sense. Kamigawa is pretty good too, but I think this set is really strong. There's so many cards that I can't wait to build around, especially, oh my goodness, the mythics in this set, that Panharmonicon cycle of doubling things up, Elish Norn, Drivnod, the entire cycle. There's so many awesome cards, Planeswalker, Super Friends, Phyrexian Vindicator. This set is absolutely ridiculous. So the good news is, even though spoiler season is done, we're gonna have a ton more Phyrexia content coming up. As soon as the set is out, we'll have gameplay videos, we'll have streams, we're gonna have top 10 videos, all that stuff coming up on the YouTube channel, so keep an eye out for that in the future. Anyway, everyone, thanks for hanging out with me this spoiler season. As far as spoilers, I'll be back in, I guess, a couple of months for March of the Machines, unless we get some surprise spoilers earlier. But like I said, we're gonna have a ton of other stuff coming up on the channel featuring all these spicy new cards. So thanks for hanging out again this spoiler season, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon.